If you want to start gardening, you have a couple options on how you can start. You can go to a plant nursery or greenhouse and buy transplants, but these can be up to $4 per plant. And although they will save you money in the long run, up front it can cost you several $100s to start your garden this way. Alternatively, you can start plants from seeds, but a lot of people are put off by this because seeds seem daunting to them because they require so much care early on and they have so many different needs than you would just having a transplant plant which has gone through the hardest stage of its life. There's two ways, so I recommend starting seeds because it's much less expensive and it's not actually as complicated as it may seem. There are two ways to start seeds in your garden. You can start them indoors or you can sow them directly. When starting them indoors, there's a couple things to keep in mind, and there's a couple reasons why you would do this. Minnesota has a short growing season, so if you start them indoors, you're giving that plant a head start so that if it has a longer than 90 days, which is the Minnesota growing season, it can have a chance to get to full maturity if it's a fruit or a vegetable. Secondly, if you start them earlier, you can also have a harvest earlier, so you don't have to wait till July or August to harvest your tomatoes or other fruit. And then also, you can spread the harvest across the season. So if you plant one row of tomatoes one week and then next the other week, tomatoes mature after about 85 days. So one week these will all mature and you'll have them to eat, and then the next week you can have that instead of having all your produce mature at the same time. So how do you plant seeds indoors? So what you do is first you dig a hole as directed on the seed packet. So you can see these are pumpkin seeds and you plant them at 1 inch depth. So you dig your hole, put your seed in, and then it's very important that when you're covering the seed, you tap the soil lightly to have good soil contact. Because if it doesn't have good soil contact, there's too much air and there's not enough nutrients, and the seed has no way of knowing that it's actually underground, which is what condition it needs to germinate. And then after you tap the soil, you water it. And it's important not to overwater, so if you're doing it in a container like this indoors, make sure to have holes in the bottom so that any excess water can drain down to the base. If there are no holes in the container, it's really important that you dig down into the soil to see how far the water has permeated. So seeds take about 1 week to germinate, and they'll look like this after a while. And then some seeds, such as peppers and tomatoes, are notoriously hard to germinate, and that's because they require high humidity, which just isn't available, especially in our homes because of mold. And so a recommendation I have for this, that my mom actually created, is that you put them in a little tightly sealed container. So after you water the seeds, you put them in here. So every time the water would evaporate from the container, it will stay in here and create like its own little ecosystem. And then the second option that I mentioned earlier is direct sow. So direct sow works very much like this, except you just take it straight outside 2 weeks after the last frost. So in Minnesota, that'll be around May 11th. And then you do as directed on the package, so you plant it at the same depth, tap, and water. Oh, okay. So hopefully this has convinced you to start seeds on your own in your garden. And it's really inexpensive, and if you save your seeds from 1 year to the next and keep them in a cool, dry place, this could be a supply that could last you indefinitely and could no longer cost you for gardening. Happy harvesting.